The quotation, "Children must be taught how to think, not what to think," originates with Margaret Mead, that cape-wearing, fork-stick-carrying public intellectual of the mid-20th century. To say Margaret Mead was a superstar of her time is not an exaggeration, and she continues to have a very devoted following today, in spite of some very well-documented, shall we say, missteps. Mead was only 23 years old when she did her 9-month research on female adolescent sexuality in Samoa, in which she fell victim to a fateful hoaxing by a couple of her informants. But before that came to light many years later, Mead wrote a best-selling and very influential book of her experiences called Coming of Age in Samoa. The summary is, Samoan girls, owing to their more open approach to sexuality, experience a less stressful transition to adulthood compared to American girls. But this thesis was seriously undermined when her Samoan informants later revealed that they were joking about their so-called open approach to sexuality. The famous quotation, "Children must be taught how to think," etc., comes from page 169 in that book, in the last chapter entitled Education for Choice. On that page, Mead writes, in her urgent style, "We must turn all of our educational efforts to training our children for the choices which will confront them." Does this mean we must present unbiased, value-free, nonpartisan knowledge to which children may apply critical thinking skills? No. No, it doesn't. She's talking about moral choices, specifically adolescent girls' sexual choices, which was Mead's claim to fame at the time. The book conjured up in the public mind the titillating image of untamed youth trysting under the moonlight on a South Sea island. You get the picture when you see the cover illustrations on the old editions. The young Margaret Mead was a product of her times, the fast-changing, liberating, ever more heterogeneous, roaring 20s. And her doctoral thesis sprang from the zeitgeist of the day. The question in the air was, should sexuality be more of a personal decision than a religious or family-imposed decision? Who should regulate such moral decisions? The short answer, according to Mead, was that the public school should turn all of its efforts to teaching children to make those choices for themselves and to have an open mind about it all. Mead was indeed telling society what to think by pronouncing her opinion on the sexual morals of her day, and her degree in anthropology added a patina of science as she advocated for an open attitude towards cultural norms regulating adolescent sex. That's the theme of the book, and it's the subtext beneath the Education for Choice chapter. But it's not merely that schools should teach for choice, but it is that, and I quote from page 169, "The home must cease to plead an ethical cause or religious belief with smiles or frowns, caresses or threats." And then, cue the drum roll, our quotation immediately follows. "Children must be taught how to think, not what to think." Once again, neither the book nor the chapter is talking about critical thinking. Margaret Mead is saying that the home must cease to teach its inferior brand of morality, because I suppose it's not scientific, and parents must hand that responsibility over to the school system. And when must the home cease to teach its absolutist morality? The sooner the better, says Mead on page 168, as deprogramming religious beliefs would be more of a shock at a later age. Taking the whole context into account, the meaning is this. Children must be taught how to make moral choices, not what is or is not moral. This is just a statement of moral relativism. Nowhere in the chapter or in the book does Mead offer suggestions as to what the specific content of this education for choice would be. That is, she doesn't explain how to teach children how to think, except to say that, and I'm quoting, education must give far more attention to physical and mental hygiene than it has hitherto. This mental hygiene reference points to a kind of proto-psychological fad in schools in the early 20th century. Mead doesn't talk about how to think at all. She's mostly concerned with the second half of that sentence, that you must not teach a child what to think, which, as we've seen, means certain causes and beliefs imparted in the home. In Mead's usage, then, don't teach children what to think means don't inculcate traditional sexual attitudes. Instead, teach children how to think, which means inculcate an attitude that's open to the various available opinions and options on sexual behavior. That's really all it is. She's not talking about critical thinking, unless you mean being critical of the moral training a child receives in the home. Thus is the advice of the freshly minted young anthropologist with no public school teaching experience or child-rearing experience, who was asked by her publisher to add one more chapter about how to apply her Samoan misadventures to American education. And the rest is history. Finally, a couple of observations. First, don't all responsible parents feel a sense of duty to give their children the benefit of their experience and their beliefs? Of course they do. The bond of love and trust in early childhood is irreplaceable. Parents care and guide their children by teaching them what to think. Does anyone have a child's best interest closer to heart than parents? And don't parents trust their child's teachers to continue child training in a way we presumably can all agree on in our communities? Second, no matter what parents teach, no matter what ethical causes parents plead, children will eventually grow up, and they'll decide for themselves what to believe. They don't stay children forever. So you, the parents, might as well be the ones to teach your children what to think, because if you don't, someone else will.